It's a cliche of courtroom dramas. That moment when the eyewitness is asked, "Do you see the person who committed the crime here in this courtroom before you?" Well, it happens in real courtrooms all the time. And to jurors, that point of the finger by a confident witness is about as damning as evidence can get. But there is one type of evidence that's even more persuasive, and that, of course, is DNA. There have been 233 people exonerated by DNA in this country, and now a stunning pattern has emerged. More than 3/4 of them were sent to prison, at least in part, because an eyewitness pointed a finger, an eyewitness who we now know was wrong. It was hot and humid in Burlington, North Carolina on the night of July 28, 1984. Jennifer Thompson, then a 22-year-old college student, had gone to bed early in her off-campus apartment. As she slept, a man shattered the light bulb near her back door, cut her phone line, and broke in.
I remember kind of waking up and turning my head to the side and saying, "Who's there? Who is it?" And I saw the top of someone's head kind of sliding beside my mattress. And I screamed, and I felt a blade go to my throat.
A knife?
A knife. And he told me to shut up or he was going to kill me.
Her first thought was to offer him anything she had to go away.
"You can have my credit card, you can have my wallet, you can have anything in the apartment, you can have my car." And he looked at me and said, "I don't want your money." And I knew what was getting ready to happen.
She vowed to stay alert and study him so that if she lived, she could help put him away forever.
What is his voice? Does he have an accent? Does he have a scar? Is there a tattoo?
He's raping you and you're studying his face.
And it was just trying to pay attention to a detail that if I survived, and that was my plan, I'd be able to help the police catch him.
After about half an hour, Jennifer tricked the rapist into letting her get up and fix him a drink, and she ran out the back door. He fled and raped a second woman half a mile away. Detective Mike Galden met Jennifer at the hospital.
The first comment I remember her making was that, "I'm going to get this guy that did this to me." She said, "I took the time to look at him. I will be able to identify him if I'm given an opportunity."
Detective Galden worked with Jennifer to make a composite sketch, poring over eyes, noses, ears, lips, trying to recreate the face she had seen that night. The sketch went out, and tips started coming in. One of those tips was about a young man named Ronald Cotton, who worked at a restaurant near the scene of both rapes and had a record, a guilty plea to breaking and entering, and as a teenager to sexual assault. 3 days after the rape, Mike Galden called Jennifer in to do a photo lineup. He laid these 6 pictures down on the table, said the perpetrator may or may not be one of them, and told her to take her time.
Does she say immediately, "That's him"?
No, she studied each photograph.
I can remember almost feeling like I was at an SAT test. You know, we start narrowing down your choices. You can discount A and B. And
Oh, like multiple choice.
exactly.
According to the police report, Jennifer studied the pictures for 5 minutes.
She picked up Ron's photograph and said, "That's the man that raped me."
And you must have said, "Are you sure?" And she said yes?
Yeah, oh yes, certainly.
Ronald Cotton heard the news from his mother's boyfriend.
He told me, he said, "Ron," he said, "the police are looking for you." And I said, "For what?" He told me, "For rape." I said, "Man, I can commit such a crime like that."
Did you panic?
I didn't panic. I'm trying to figure out, why.
He comes in and gives me a very detailed account of where he was, who he was with that night. As it turns out, that was a false alibi.
I realized later that I had got my weekends confused, and so therefore I gave them the reason to think that I was lying.
This was August 1st, 1984.
Right.
You go in to clear yourself. When did you actually leave?
I didn't.
He was locked up and days later put in a physical lineup.
I'm number 5.
You scared?
I was very scared, nervous. I was so nervous. I was trembling. I felt my body just shaking.
They were asked to step forward, speak, and step back.
I can remember looking to the detective and saying, "It's between 4 and 5. Can I have them do it again?"
And then she knew it was number 5, Ronald Cotton.
Did you feel absolutely certain?
Absolutely certain.
Did anybody say to you, good job?
Well, what was said to me afterwards was, that's the same person you picked out in the photo lineup. So in my mind, I thought, bingo, I did it right. I did it right.
In a week-long trial, the jury heard about Ronald Cotton's faulty alibi, his clothing that matched Jennifer's description, and a piece of foam found on her floor that seemed to come from one of his shoes. And most powerfully, they heard from Jennifer.
When they ask you, do you recognize the man who did this to you? Did you point to him? It was
Absolutely.
Ron Cotton.
It was Ronald Cotton.
She called my name, pointed a finger, and that's all it takes, it seemed like.
What did that feel like?
It felt like someone pushing a knife through me.
It took the jury just 40 minutes. The verdict? Guilty on all counts.
He was sentenced to life and 50 years. And it was for me that moment that you know the justice system works. Because I am the victim, and he's a horrible person, and he will never, ever be free again.
Ronald Cotton was handcuffed, shackled, and taken to North Carolina's Central Prison. He was 22 years old.
You know, they say grown men doesn't cry, but it's a lie. You know, I grabbed my pillow many times and hugged it, wishing I was hugging my mom, my dad, sister, brother. I wish it didn't have to be this way.
He started working in the prison kitchen, singing in the choir, and writing letter after letter to his attorneys, hoping to get a new trial. Then one day, as he watched a new inmate being brought in, he had a strange feeling.
I said, excuse me. I said, you look familiar. I said, where are you from? He said, I'm from Burlington. I said, I am too. I said, you kind of resemble the drawing of a suspect in a crime of which I'm falsely in prison for. Did you commit this crime? And he told me, no, he did not.
Wait a sec, you saw him and thought of that composite drawing?
Mm-hmm.
His name was Bobby Poole, and he was in for rape. He started working in the prison kitchen, too.
And the stewardess were calling me Poole instead of Cotton.
They were calling you by his name?
Yes.
In other words, people were mistaking the two of you.
Yes, exactly.
Then a fellow inmate told him that he'd heard Bobby Poole admit to raping Jennifer and the other woman that night. Ronald Cotton won a new trial, and his lawyers called Bobby Poole to the stand with Jennifer sitting right there. It was the moment Ronald Cotton had been hoping for.
Bobby Poole is in the courtroom. You look over there. What happens inside you?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. As a matter of fact, the strongest emotion I felt was anger at the defense. Because I thought, how dare you? How dare you question me? How dare you try to paint me as someone who could possibly have forgotten what my rapist looked like? I mean, the one person you would never forget? How dare you?
Ronald Cotton was convicted again, this time given 2 life sentences. Back in prison 7 years later, he and everyone else was riveted by a big news story, the trial of O.J. Simpson.
I would get my radio, put my earplugs, and go outside, sit in a corner.
And listen to the trial.
Yes.
He was intrigued by something he had never heard of, DNA. He wrote to his new attorney, law professor Rich Rosen. Rosen warned him that there probably wasn't any evidence left to test, and if there was, DNA could cut both ways.
Understand, if the DNA comes back and shows that you did this crime, whatever legal issues we have don't make any bit of difference. You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison.
He warned you that if it comes up positive, you're sunk.
I told him to put his foot down and go with it.
Packed away on the shelves of the Burlington Police Department was 10-year-old evidence from the 2 rapes that night. Inside one of the rape kits was a fragment of a single sperm with viable DNA. It proved what Ronald Cotton had been saying all along. He was innocent, and the rapist was Bobby Poole. Within days, Ronald Cotton was back in court.
You are walking out here today as a free man.
This time to be released.
So not only do you find out that Ron didn't do the crime, you find out Bobby Poole did.
It was just utter shock, really, disbelief. I mean, By this time, this is 11 years later. And, you know, I know that I've been involved in a case of a man's lost 11 years of his life. And I was so sad for him and his family.
In the years since Ronald Cotton's conviction, Jennifer had married and had children.
Are you the one that tells her?
Yes. Her reaction, no, that can't be true. It's not possible, you know. I know Ronald Cotton raped me. There's no question in my mind.
It was like someone had just taken my life and like turned it upside down.
She cried?
Oh, she cried. She broke down. I mean, she took it all on herself. You know, the guilt. You know, I did this to that man.
Shame?
Shame, terrible shame. Suffocating, debilitating shame.
But when she thought or dreamed about that night, it was still Ronald Cotton's face she saw. To get past it, she asked if he would meet with her at a local church.
I remember him walking into the church, and I physically could not stand up.
She was nervous, scared.
I started to cry immediately, and I looked at him and I said, Ron, if I spent every second of every minute, every hour for the rest of my life telling you how sorry I am, it wouldn't come close to how my heart feels. I'm so sorry. And Ronald just leaned down, he took my hands.
Oh, gosh.
And he looked at me, he said, I forgive you.
I told her, I said, Jennifer, I forgive you. I don't want you to look over your shoulder. That I just want us to be happy and move on in life.
The minute he forgave me, it's like my heart physically started to heal. And I thought, this is what grace and mercy is all about. This is what they teach you in church that none of us ever get. And here was this man that I had hated with, I mean, I used to pray every day of my life during those 11 years that he would die, that he would be raped in prison and someone would kill him in prison. That was my prayer to God. And here was this man who, with grace and mercy, just forgave me.
That is overwhelming. It's overwhelming.
How wrong I was and how good he is.
How is it that Jennifer could have studied her rapist so carefully and still made this mistake? And how could she have failed to recognize Bobby Poole, the actual rapist, when he sat right in front of her in the courtroom 3 years later? That part of the story when we come back.